Hello and welcome to Fox Sports Lab AFL. Another exciting weekend, and no more exciting for the Chief down the slide. Bang, pretty exciting to be part of something like that. But initial thoughts now after you've done it, and looked a bit colder than you thought. I know your initial reaction was awesome, but your hair looked even better.
It was a lot of fun, Dicko. It was just a great privilege to be part of something very, very special. And I mean, the way Neil Danaher keeps pushing on, it's inspirational to everybody. It boggles the mind, actually. The fight that he's waging has just been incredible. And to play a tiny part was a huge honour.
And to think that there was a game of footy afterwards, obviously, with Neil Danaher and what he's done. But Melbourne, they came out swinging, and Collingwood, well, you thought at stages Collingwood were going to kick away with it. But I want to put to you the Stone Cold Pies, because they've got the bye now. I thought they had a holiday ahead. I've never seen them turn the ball over, fumble, especially in the last quarter, which is their go-to. And I just thought their composure was done. I thought they had holiday ahead. I'm happy for you to disagree, but I just thought up here they were already on the beach with a pina colada.
I don't know if it's holiday head, Diggo, but I will say they had an off day. I mean, you even saw at different stages Pendlebury turning the ball over, and he just doesn't do that. I think they were all a yard or two off the Pies. They slipped over a lot. Melbourne outworked them. I mean, Melbourne got more numbers to the ball. They got more numbers down back to outnumber the Collingwood forwards. They had extra forwards up forward, so it just tells you they were working harder up and down the ground. They wanted it more. They made it happen. And it's probably the win that Melbourne needed to have, because they've been a little bit off the pace. They haven't been able to beat the top teams over the last year and a half. Well, this time they put their best foot forward, and all of a sudden, instead of just Collingwood and Port Adelaide followed by daylight, maybe Melbourne is a genuine contender.
We always think, what are these coaches like? But we're seeing more and more about Craig McRae and the players and the messaging he gives them, the confidence. But before the game, he put a photo of Brodie Grundy up on the whiteboard and said, he's one of us. He spent time at Collingwood. We respect him. It was our call on list management to move him to Melbourne. And I didn't see any added aggression during the game. But what does that tell you about a coach like Craig McRae from your perspective?
He does things differently, doesn't he, Fly? He's a ripper. I like everything he does. I think that takes the weight off the players. It's just saying, look, that was a decision we had to make. I love the fact that they're showing respect to an opposition player. So it wasn't about let's go out and target him. Just respect him because he is a good guy. We couldn't fit him into our scheme of things. So let's move on and just play the game of football. Now, it didn't work on the weekend, but it's a nice, refreshing approach, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And take me back to 1998 when you were 42 when you retired? And
he's up.
Kicking bags and there was lots of defenders running past you. That's why you retired. As we look at it now, though, Tex Walker kicks 10. 250 games, incredible milestone, but that's one thing. And then I want to talk about the young forwards, because you are obviously one of the best. And you got Max King in his last 3 weeks kicked 4-4-3. And then we've got Jai Miss, who's kicked 4 on the weekend again. Nick Larkey's kicked 4. And Mitch Lewis, the big forwards, another 4. So the big bags, and you know better than anyone, getting that sort of supply and then finishing your work. Like, talk us through a couple of those forwards in particular who you like.
Yeah, well, I do like them all. There's a good crop coming through. And I guess they're all a little bit different. Of those, Mitch Lewis is probably the real power forward. He's a big, bulky size, but he's also very, very mobile. Jai Amos I like. He's terrific on the lead, but he can take a good contested mark. He's a good shot for goal. Nick Larkey just keeps doing what he does. He flies under the radar a bit, Nick Larkey, because he plays for North Melbourne, unfortunately. And, they don't get a lot of love. They don't get a lot of coverage. And I mean, Max King's been brilliant since coming back from injury, hasn't he? 3 games back and he's gone bang, bang, bang. So he's the one we're looking to take that next step and become a superstar, I think, and maybe he's on the way.
What about Carlton? So we look at it.
What about him?
Well, I jumped off him 4 weeks ago, so I took your advice on board. It only took me like 7 rounds to get it through my thick skull. But they tried to play fast. They tried to play slow. I mean, during the centre bounces, 13-7 in favour of the Bombers. Like, we thought they had one of the great midfielders. They don't probably have a strong midfield. They've got a great forward line. The connection's not there. I'm putting out a lot of deficiencies in their game, but they haven't got a lot to come as well. I mean, they got 1 pick in the first 3 rounds of this draft, so there's not a lot to look forward to in terms of growth. Where do they go? They've got Gold Coast this weekend, then they've got the bye. Where do you see them?
Yeah, it's an issue for them, isn't it? Because They've made a lot of trades in recent years to try and fill those holes on the list. And on paper, it looked like they were filling those spots, but the players haven't reached the potential they wanted them to reach. So it has compromised their ability to get talent through the draft. You talk about maybe some of the deficiencies in the way they're playing. There's deficiencies on the list. And in particular, good ball users and good decision makers, Dicko. So they've got a few problems to work on. I don't know how they're going to salvage this year. In fact, I think this year's well and truly gone. It's going to be an interesting game this weekend. Just the matchup down here at home against Gold Coast Suns. It's a big game for them because their spirit's going to be well and truly broken if they don't get a couple of wins on the board soon. I don't see them jumping up the ladder anytime soon. And it's going to be interesting to see how they try and adjust their list at the end of the season, given the lack of draft picks.
Well, talk us through a pivotal part of Hawthorn's rebuild and restructure with Clarko. You appointed Clarko and then sat in terms of the governance, and you're obviously with the footy department. Luke Sayers gets on radio and says, finals are still where we want to be, and that's our goal this year. Michael Voss was asked that after the game and totally went around that question. So would you say there's a little disconnect in terms of the communication and the level of, what we should be putting out there in the media?
Well, I think from Luke Sayers' perspective, that's the president just trying to continue to communicate with the fans and just say that we haven't lost hope. We're pressing on. That was the goal. It's always the goal. Whenever you approach the season, you're trying to make the finals. Until it's mathematically impossible, they'll just keep saying that message to their supporters because that's what the supporters want to hear. Vossi's not interested in talking about finals. He's a coach. He's got more pressing matters at hand, and that's the way they're playing. So he's just not going to get drawn into that sort of chat.
All right, West Coast. Now, another 100 points. So everyone's just, giving them mulligans because of their young list and, they've got no players and their older players are in the twilight of their career. But I don't think they should get off so lightly. Like, on average games, 86 from the Crows and 83 from West Coast. So is it Adam Simpson's downside that he hasn't played these young kids a little bit more throughout the last couple of years especially, or has he just waited too long to pull the trigger on a rebuild? Because surely as a club, they're not going to accept 100-point losses, every third or fourth week.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder what the psychological toll on the playing group's going to be when you keep getting belted like this. We're 5 years on from a flag, aren't we? So they have got the quality of their list is really at the top end age-wise. So they're going to start to drop out over at the end of this year and certainly next year. And you wonder, is there the right quality of youngster coming through? It's going to be a really difficult proposition for West Coast because I think they're very poorly positioned. So they're going to lose a lot of those players. I don't think they're going to be super competitive. They've been sitting there saying, well, when we get some of these players back, all the players they're waiting for, Dicko, and the ones that are going through the injuries now, they're all 30 plus. And they're all at the back end of their career and they haven't played their best footy for quite some time. So I don't know where the light at the end of the tunnel is. And I really feel for Simo because he looks so distraught at times on the weekend and just resigned to the fact that there's not a lot he can do. So I don't know how they take that group forward.
Well, talking about taking the group forward, so the Dogs, last 3 weeks, clearly won the uncontested game by 70 plus. They've won the inside 50 count, but lost each game on an average of 20 points. What needs to change? Because the Doggies' old style is not working for them now and hasn't worked for almost a month.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Luke Beveridge can turn things around. They find themselves in positions to win games, but just not able to hit the scoreboard. Aaron Norton's struggling to get in the contest up forward. So are they giving him the right sort of service? Probably not. Ugle Hagen looks dangerous at times. Rory Lobb's not exactly grabbing games by the scruff of the neck. So, they've got some problems with the way they're moving the ball forward. You kind of think they're always going to battle their way in there, and there are spots in the 8 up for grabs, but you just wonder whether the Bulldogs are actually playing well enough to get in there and whether Luke Beveridge is going to try and change things or if he just believes the execution of what they're doing isn't good enough.
All right. Now, you just said believe. Brisbane obviously don't believe at the MCG or they don't know how to play the game right or the ground. I mean, it's an oval ground. Everyone says, it should be, you should know exactly how to play the MCG. But Hawthorn showed them a clean set of heels. They had almost 100 – well, it might have even been 105, I think it was, uncontested possessions. They helped themselves through by handball. They just looked really slow, Brisbane. They didn't play the ground well. Is it actually an issue? I mean, we can say MCG, but that's the biggest stage. That's where you got to win on in September. But are you finding that a real concern for Brisbane?
100%. They have got problems. They're not playing great football down there. They look to me like a team that turned up expecting to beat Hawthorn and just thinking whatever they did would be good enough, and it wasn't good enough, and there was no pressure. And the Hawks just really wanted that game. They grabbed it, and then Brisbane couldn't do anything about it. That was the disappointing thing. Yeah. I mean, they got a wake-up call early in that game. They couldn't shake Hawthorn, and then Hawthorn started to get on top, and at no stage were they able to do anything. They've got plenty of senior players in that group that should be able to help turn the game around, and it's not a great sign when you can't do it against one of the bottom teams. So, love Fags and like seeing Brisbane do well, but they've got a lot of work to do to catch up to the top teams.
All right, Chief, appreciate your time. The highlight of my Monday, speaking to you as always. Thanks for joining us on Fox Sports Lab AFL. Back on Thursday to preview a full round 14.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.